Hi, my name is Lisa Kassner, and I'm a volunteer working to pass Proposition 37 this November. Prop 37 is the California Right to Know Genetically Engineered Food Labeling Initiative. I am one of thousands of grassroots volunteers who are working very hard throughout this state so that you and I can have the fundamental right to know what is in the food we eat and feed our families. Polls show that 90% of Americans and Californians want this food labeled. Before the opposition's ad campaign, we were polling at about 65% for yes. Now many people we have talked to have become very confused because of the barrage of information that they are receiving. This has clouded the very clear reasons why this will be a good law and why it will benefit all California consumers to vote yes. I decided that it was time to make this video. I am a volunteer. I am not paid by anyone. I am not a professional actress. I don't have professional recording equipment, and I'm sorry, but I don't have my lines memorized. I only wish to speak from the heart so that you will see both the passion and the reason that are driving all of our efforts. My fervent hope is that when you hear and see the whole picture, you will join me in voting yes. I appreciate your taking time to consider the serious issues involved with genetically engineered foods. I will do my best to be brief, to describe the issue in general, and then respond to the commonly asked concerns. If I don't answer your questions, or if your viewing is cut short, please do yourself and your family a favor and consider the Yes on 37 website, carightToknow.org, which has all the information. Let me start by asking you, do you look at calorie listings on food labels, allergen information, trans fats? These are all helpful bits of information that we have on food packaging that help us to make an informed choice about what we are buying. But there is something else that is not on food labels and should be, and that is whether the food contains genetically engineered ingredients. What is genetic engineering? It is when genes from one species, such as a bacterium, virus, animal, or even humans, are forced into the DNA of a food crop or animal to introduce a new trait. This is a laboratory process. It is not found in nature. It's not the same as the age-old practice of selective breeding. Genetically engineered foods are sometimes called GMOs, which means genetically modified organisms. According to the Grocery Manufacturers Association, 80% of processed foods in the United States contain GMO ingredients. Right now, there are 8 GMO food crops: corn, soy, cottonseed, canola, sugar beets, Hawaiian papaya, crookneck squash, and zucchini. Why do we need labeling of GMOs? Because the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, is allowing these foods to be sold to us without having been proven safe for human consumption. There are animal studies with negative findings, including organ damage, tumors, infertility, and immune system changes. Toxins from GMO corn have been found in the blood of 93% of pregnant women and 80% of their umbilical cords. GMOs can potentially cause allergic reactions due to the insertion of genes from one species into another without the knowledge of the consumer. These indicate potential health risks for humans eating GMOs. It is clear that more research is needed, yet we are eating these foods every day in baby formula, corn syrup, cereal, candy, and so much more. The long-term peer-reviewed Séralini study was just published, which linked genetically engineered corn, which contains insecticide in every cell, to mammary tumors and organ damage. Russia just banned the importing of Monsanto's GMO sweet corn because of this study. But there is no law in the U.S. to even have it labeled so that we have a choice whether to eat it or not. The World Health Organization and the American Medical Association agree GMOs should undergo mandatory safety testing, but instead of requiring independent science, the FDA wants us to trust pesticide companies that produce GMO seeds. Companies like Monsanto, Dow, and DuPont. These companies that told us that DDT and Agent Orange were safe. They have bought up the pesticide companies to such a degree that the majority of corn, soy, and canola we buy are GMO. They either have pesticides in the cells, or are modified to withstand heavy pesticide applications. 85% of conventional corn and corn products we eat are from GMO corn, which is regulated as a pesticide by the FDA. In addition, people may be breaking the dictates of their conscience or religious laws without knowing it by eating GMOs. There are no laws now that help vegetarians know they are possibly eating ice cream with GMO yeast with fish genes in it. And for Jews and Muslims whose religion can prohibit eating eel, there are no federal or California laws that will require labeling of the upcoming GMO salmon with eel genes. GMOs are linked to financial, environmental, and long-term food supply concerns such as 1. The prevalence of pesticides and herbicides, 2. Their effect on beneficial plants and animals and also on humans, and 3. The growing monopoly of the large seed companies over the world food supply and the resulting monoculture planting of foods. These issues are already having financial effects on farmers worldwide. American companies like Coke, Pepsi, and Kellogg must already label GMOs in 61 other countries. Don't we deserve these same rights? Because prior efforts to pass legislation in the United States or have the FDA require that this food be labeled, these have all failed. A grassroots petition drive was done to qualify Proposition 37 for the California ballot. Now may be our only chance to get this food labeled. What about the opposition's arguments? The opposition is very concerned about the popularity of Proposition 37. They don't want to label this food. One GMO brand company executive said years ago that labeling genetically engineered food would be like putting a skull and crossbones on it. So far, the opposition has raised over $40 million for a misinformation campaign, trying to scare and confuse people into thinking labeling will be expensive or unfair. They are using fear, uncertainty, and doubt to try to persuade you. Let's let the facts speak for themselves. What does Proposition 37 really say? The full text is available in the Voter Handbook or online. The key points are that raw GMO agricultural commodities for retail sale must be labeled genetically engineered. Processed foods for general public purchase, which contain GMOs, must be labeled saying, may be partially produced with genetic engineering or partially produced with genetic engineering. And these products will not be allowed to be labeled as natural anymore because this is misleading. The opposition claims that the exemptions in this law would be for special interests. There are some reasonable exemptions in the law, that is true. Since California law allows only one topic per initiative, GMO salmon species like GMO corn and other GMO crops would be labeled. But there are currently no genetically engineered cow or chicken species. They just eat GMO feed. So dairy, beef, and eggs would not be required to be labeled. The state would consider that too broad for the same initiative. Pet food, however, has GMO corn and soy fillers in it, so it must be labeled. Restaurants don't commonly label the food they serve, and alcohol is not normally labeled and is regulated by federal law. The opposition is claiming that these are, quote, special interest exemptions. But these types of exemptions are logical and fair. Consumers Union endorses Proposition 37 because it protects all consumers' interests. Since when is the general public a special interest? The opposition also misleads by stating that this measure was written for the benefit of trial lawyers. This campaign actually began with the efforts of Pam Larry, a grandma and former midwife, who organized volunteers across the state, including me, toward the ballot drive with only one goal in mind: to let consumers know if our food contains GMOs. You can hear her on YouTube. The initiative itself was written by a group of food industry, science, farm, and health experts. One intention was to make the law practical, inexpensive, and easy to follow. Indeed, there are thousands of retailers and farmers who endorse this campaign. In addition, the leading businesses in the natural and sustainable food sector and the leading labor groups such as United Farm Workers, United Food and Commercial Workers, and the California Labor Federation are all saying yes on 37. Plus, the Los Angeles City Council voted unanimously to support Proposition 37. The opposition's claims about shakedown lawsuits are also false. The initiative provides no economic incentives for lawyers to sue. Any penalties from a violation go only to the state, not the plaintiff. Consumers can't file a class action lawsuit without first giving notice, and if the defendant fixes the labels, no class action is permitted. Retailers can ask suppliers for a sworn statement or stick a simple label on produce bins. GMO labeling won't be costly to consumers. The opposition has paid for reports that claim consumers will have to pay more for groceries if GMOs must be labeled. And this is an understandable concern for us all. But those with actual knowledge disagree. For example, according to David Byrne, the former Commissioner for Health and Consumer Protection for the European Union, GMO labeling in Europe, quote, did not result in increased costs despite the horrifying double-digit prediction of some interest, unquote. Remember, we didn't pay more for trans fat or allergen labeling. Companies have 18 months to update their labels, which is longer than the normal frequency of changing labels. There are legitimate studies that confirm that Proposition 37 won't be costly, and it functions in a different way than Proposition 65, which was what people are comparing it to. Proposition 37 is self-enforced and requires no new bureaucracy. The state official analyst has said any cost for enforcement would range from 1 to 3 cents per year for each Californian. Look at the voter booklet. Proposition 37 does not ban GMOs or force food companies to use other ingredients. But if farmers and food companies find demand for GMOs drops, they will sell us other products. That's the nature of a free market economy. GMO food manufacturers worry that we will not want to buy their product, just like consumers turned against pink slime in beef when they found out about it. And then the question arises, whom do you trust with your health? Our campaign is grassroots, made up of moms, dads, grandmas, and average consumers like me who care about their health. We have a very long list and a broad spectrum of endorsements, including health professionals such as the California Nurses Association and the American Public Health Association. Dr. Oz supports GMO labeling. But the opposition is spending $1 million a day on their information or misinformation campaign to get us to opt out of knowing what is in our food. When you hear the scare stories about Proposition 37, remember who is behind them. Monsanto, Dow, and DuPont covered up the dangers and DDT of Agent Orange, and the opposition's expert, Henry Miller, who is in their ads and their voter booklet, has been an advocate for DDT, Philip Morris, and has suggested that the victims of the Fukushima, Japan disaster who experienced low levels of radiation, quote, could have actually benefited from it, unquote. It should not be up to these folks to decide what you and I get to know what we eat and drink. We must stand up for ourselves and for our families, our health, and our future. Proposition 37 is in our best interest, individually and as a community. Please join me in supporting the right to know and vote yes on Proposition 37. Please visit the CA Right to Know website for more information, and you can see the video description attached for source references for what I mentioned in this message. Thank you so much for your consideration and support, and I hope you will help us spread the word. Thank you.